Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning. And thank you, Ayla, for sharing all of that information about the community. I'm a big promoter of Women Who Code. I've been with the community for only 4-5 months. And I have to admit, it's a very friendly and supportive community. I've met some great people and partnered with some great engineers within the community. So definitely do check out all our volunteering opportunities to help and support. Okay, so we'll start with today's session. This is the second session in the series. We did the last one last Saturday. I did share the recording and some exercises for attendees to practice the concepts that I had gone through or covered during my first session. So in terms of today's agenda, I'm going to share my screen first. Yeah, you can see my screen. So yeah, so in the last section, we did an introduction to Git and GitHub. We looked at some basic Git operation commands like git add, git commit. We understood very thoroughly, I would say, what Git branches are, what the head is, how you can investigate where your head is actually pointing to. We looked to how you can stash your changes in case you're working on some draft changes and it's not ready to be committed. You can git stash and then git pop again. So we are running a little behind, but I rather do it properly or rather do it in detail so that the attendees understand than rushing through some of these concepts. So today I will go through undoing changes in your Git repository, even undoing commit changes, merging branches. And we'll cover this after we go through pull requests because there's not enough. There is a git merge command, but there's not enough use cases that we use that for. In today's time, in the open source community, the way you can just merge your changes is by creating pull requests on GitHub. So I'll cover this once I've gone through a pull request because it would make more sense when I cover it over here. And then we will begin. So after I go through undoing how you can undo your changes in your history within your Git repository, we'll go through some of the GitHub basics, what git push, fetch, and pull actually mean. Again, we'll try to understand the concepts first, and then we will go into running the commands and seeing what that looks like. Yeah, and then we will understand what pull requests are. We'll try to create a pull request. This is a feature for GitHub because GitHub is a collaboration tool. All of these commands that we've been going through till now, they are a Git feature, okay? Git fetch, git push, git pull. There is no command called git PR. So just trying to make you understand those differences or boundaries on what is a feature of Git and what a feature is provided by GitHub. GitHub is a collaboration tool which allows us to create these pull requests so that members or collaborators, contributors can have a discussion, ask questions. It will be very difficult if you're just on your terminal and trying to collaborate and ask questions or answer certain queries about your pull request. So pull request is a GitHub feature. I think I want to cover all of this today, and then I will schedule another session to go through some of the collaboration workflow, understanding what forks are, and understanding what your remote is, what an upstream is, and then going through rebasing. So I hope we can cover till pull request today. Okay, so we'll start with undoing changes, and I will share my other screen. Okay, so today we will go through how do you undo some of the changes on GitHub. I'll just name it undoing changes. Okay, and there are GitHub or Git provides 3 different commands in how you can do it. Okay, so it can be a bit confusing or it could be a bit overwhelming because there are a lot of commands and there are a lot of options that are provided with it. So let's try to focus and understand what those commands actually do and why do we have so many different commands? What are their use cases? Okay, so the first one is like a git restore. And this allows us to restore 2 kinds of changes, okay? One is restore, and this is for files. So let's say this is for files. This will allow us to restore a file. There are 2 use cases for it. Restore files to the current head. So let's say you make some local changes in your repository and you're not happy with those changes. So you want to revert back to whatever was there in in your GitHub repository before any changes were committed. Okay, so again, going back to what we discovered in our last, what we covered in our last session, if you remember, let me just add another one. So we had our working directory, we had our staging area, we had our local repo, and we had a remote repo. Okay, so you have you've committed some changes. So to move any files or any changes from your working directory to your staging area, we use the git add command. And to move your changes from the staging area to the local repository area, we use the git commit command. Okay, and then git pushes when we go to the remote, which we will cover today. But now let's say I have some changes in my working directory. Okay. Okay, and we want to, I'm not happy with these changes, so I committed. There's a hash called some hash that was commit. So that's the last commit that was made in my local repository. This is where my head is pointing to. Again, this is something we covered in the last session, that your head for your branch is pointing to your, so the head points to the branch, whichever one is checked out in your current repository. So if I'm working on master, your head will, actually it's not right. Your head will point to whatever is in your main branch. And this main actually in turn points to the last commit. So these are just kind of aliases to say, okay, my head is pointing to my main branch, or whatever branch is checked out currently in your particular working directory, that's your main. It means this is where my changes will go in. And your main is just another name, or it's another alias to say, okay, that is my last commit. Okay, so this is currently what is there in my main branch, or whatever branch you're working on, and your head is pointing to the last commit in that particular branch. Now I come in and I want to make some changes. So I've made some changes over here, and I'm not happy with these changes. So I haven't done a git add or a git commit yet. Okay, I just have some files and I'm not happy with this. So to revert all of this, to say, okay, I'm not happy with these changes, I want to discard all of them, and I want to go back to this, how my repository exactly looked in time at ABCD, at this particular commit history. So for that, the command that you can run is, so you just go back to whatever was ABCD over here, you do a git restore and the name of the file in which you made. So if there are multiple files, you can add like file 1, file 2. Okay, now you cannot just run a git restore, because it is a bit, you have to use it with caution, because there is no tracking of these files. Okay, so that's why we have to use the git restore file 1, file. I mean, you do it per file basis rather than just running a git restore on all your working directories. So you are consciously saying, I only want to restore this file, because if you lose it, it's lost. There's no history, there's no tracking. You will lose those changes completely. Okay, so that's the first one. That is what git restore allows us to do. Restore the files as they were in the head. Your head is your latest commit in the particular branch that you're working on. The next one is, let's say you've made some changes. Yeah, let's say you've made some changes and you have already put it in your staging area. Okay, so this is where your changes are now. And now you're not happy with those changes and you want to like restore that, or just completely get rid of all of those changes and go back to however your branch is looking at the head. And again, head points to the latest commit. In that particular case, and you want to, into this git restore command, you can go back and unstage these files. So we added a git add here. That's how these moved from the working directory to the staging area. And now you want to unstage them. So you want to go from staging area to the working directory. You can use the same git restore command, but with the hyphen. staging option, and then similarly name of the file, whatever files you have. Okay, so that's the first command. Git restore your particular file changes in your local directory, just restore all of that, and unstage files. And I will show you that Git actually prompts you with these messages as well when you're trying to when you run a Git status, you will see that Git is actually prompting you, oh, you have this file stage. If you want to unstage these files, run this command. Or it will tell you, oh, you have this file which has certain changes. If you want to remove those changes, run this command. So this is fairly the simple of the others that we would cover. And Git also prompts you about these messages. This is, the restore is for managing your working directory. So we haven't committed anything yet, okay? We're still in the stage where we are working in our working directory or we have commits in our staging area. Once we commit these changes, then we have two other commands to manage them. And one of them is called the Git reset. Okay. And the other one is called the Git revert. Yeah. Okay. So this is head and this is staging. We can also revert changes in the staging area. Okay. And between Git reset and Git revert, there is the reset command, where you can reset a particular commit. Okay, so you say, let's say we were at this particular commit, and before this we have another one area. So let's say we have some commits, C1, C2, C3, C4. Okay, and I want to say, okay, I want to reset it to this particular commit, C2. I don't want, so this has already been committed. These changes are in your local repository. I want to reset my particular repository to C2 and undo these commits, C3 and C4. So in that particular case, you can run the git reset command. I think I will use this command because it will explain it again better. So let me just do this. Okay, so now we're looking at the git. We're looking at the git reset command. Okay, so in reset, you already, let's say you already have some changes, which is C1, C2, C3, C4. Okay, because there are two flavors of this command, and you say, okay, I want to go back to, there was some, you made some commits, you pushed it into production, there was an issue reported, and you identified the issue was because of these two commits that you had pushed out. Okay, and you want to revert back to the last known good, which is C2. Okay, now to undo these changes, you have two options. You can either run a git reset. What git reset will do is it will undo these changes. So this is what your repository look like before running a git reset. And after you run a git reset, it will look like this. You will have these commits, C1, C2. C3 and C4 is completely wiped out. So you lose those commits. And maybe you have some files over here. Let's say for the C3 and C4, you changed a few files. I changed maybe two files, okay? What git reset in the normal one does is it will revert these changes back into your working directory, okay? So you lose the commit history. The commits are completely wiped out. It will look like nothing happened, but your changes are preserved. And it will make more sense when you start seeing it when I start do it on the terminal. So you lose your commit history. It is showing as, okay, nothing happened. This was the last commit, that was C2. But your changes are preserved because Git gives you a last option to say, okay, do you want to do anything with these changes? And when you run a Git status at this point, it will say, you have these modified files. Do you want to add them or do you want to like commit them? That's what Git will say at this point. Okay. But in case, if you don't want these changes at all and you're happy to get rid of them, you don't want to keep them as well, then you can run this with the, so this is git reset. And if you use the git reset hard option, you will lose your changes as well. Okay, so in that particular case, you will have C1 and C2, and your changes are also gone. Your changes are not preserved. Okay, so commit history is just reverted back. It's like as if nothing happened. Those records are just deleted, and your changes are preserved with git reset. If you don't want those changes, you can use the git reset hard option. So this is the git reset. Now the third one, so we come back here. There's two options where you just reset a commit hash or lose commit history. I think that would be a better term. You lose your commit history. And you preserve your changes. And the other option is you lose commit history.
I won't allow you to paste in a single I don't think about those kinds.
I will look at the comments that have come in the chat. Yeah, you lose the commit history. Plus, you lose the changes. And this is the --hard flag. Okay. And the last one is git revert. This obviously this doesn't have any other flavors. It's just a simple command. You git revert a particular commit hash. But what happens in this case is, let's say, again, taking the same example, if I can fit it here, it will be nice. Same example, you have these commits, C1, C2, C3, C4, and now you use the command git revert instead of a git reset. What would happen? You want to revert. So you want to revert back to this particular hash. In that case, your commit history will look like, I'm just continuing. Your commit history will look like, so this is your current one, C1, C2, C3, C4, and you want to go back to what it was at C2. And in that case, your commit history will look like C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5. So Git adds another commit, okay, undoing all the changes. So you lose the changes, but your commit history is all preserved. Okay, so there's another change that is made by Git, but it undoes your changes, undoes C3, C4. So that way you know that, okay, I actually pushed out the commit C3 and C4, and then I undid those changes in this commit C5. So you exactly know what's happening, and it's not like, so in the other cases with git reset, we wipe out the history completely. But in this particular case, we're preserving the history and adding another commit to kind of log. So it's like an additional logging telling, okay, I have reverted these changes. But with git reset, you cannot know that those changes were actually reverted back. So that's the difference between the git reset command and the git revert command. And now if you want to understand, like an obvious question, okay, when both of them is just taking me back to a previous commit history, which one should I do? So it is git reset and then git revert. Okay. If your changes are local, okay, you are just working on your particular local repository. I know we haven't covered the remote repositories. We're still, we'll go to the collaboration area. But if you're just working on your local repository and you haven't pushed those changes, again, I mean, you haven't shared those changes with your collaborators via GitHub, then you should use GitHub. Then in that particular case, you should use git reset. Okay. So in case, let's say, changes not shared with other collaborators. Okay. But if you have already shared those changes with your collaborators and they have those commits, okay, let's say they already have C1, C2, C3, C4 with themselves. for them to revert back is going to cause a lot of chaos and confusion, and we don't want that. In that particular case, you should always do a git revert rather than a git reset, because then it kind of clearly logs that you made those changes, and then when you are undoing those changes, you add in the commit message that this is the reason why I'm reverting those changes. It failed or it was broken. So it gives your collaborators more visibility into why something was undone rather than just wiping it out completely. Okay. And this is when changes have been shared.
Bhawana, I'm so sorry to intervene. There are some questions, and I think some of us are very confused.
Yeah, it is a bit confusing. That's why
Yeah.
I was like, we need to concentrate here.
Could
So
you please
I was
ask the questions? Like,
yeah, I will just, that's why I was like, I will just complete this and I will take a look at the chat.
okay,
So,
okay then. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, no worries. I am just looking at the chat history. Clarify, are checked out and committed synonymous or not? No. So a checkout is basically when you have the changes in a particular branch within your working directory. So if we go back to this diagram basically, and you have different branches, okay? So let's say you have a branch called B1, B2, B3, okay? At any one point of time within your, again, it's something that I showed in the last session as well, but at any one point in your working directory, you will only have one particular branch, okay? The commits or what your files look in one particular branch. Your local repository is aware of those branches, okay? To be fair, this is what will happen. Your local repository is aware of those branches. It has all the history, it has all the information. And when you need that information, let's say you want to look at what's happening in B2, so then you can run the git switch B2. And at that particular point, your working directory will replace the files that were in B1 to B2. That's what you mean by a checkout. So you are getting all the changes or the required changes in a particular branch. And then you can do that with commits as well, but I'm trying to refrain from using the checkout because it does too many things. So checkout will also allow you to do what we covered as a part of git restore. So that's why I'm trying to avoid using the checkout command and use the more newer commands like the git restore and the git switch. So checkout is when you have changes for a particular branch in your working directory. What changes have you checked out in your working directory? That's what checkout means. And commit is what we've been covering. So you have some changes in your working directory. And if you want to put them in a staging area is like a way to tell Git that, okay, because you can be writing a lot of files in your working directory and Git is tracking all of that. So git add command tells Git that, okay, these changes are good to proceed and I would like to park it in the staging area. After that, you do a git commit to move those changes from the staging area into the local repository. That's when you do a git commit. So commit is moving your changes from your staging area to your local repository, and git checkout is, you can say, getting all the changes from your local repository to the working directory. So it's, yeah, from your local repository to your working directory is what you're getting as a part of the checkout command. What is commented for that last? What is the command for that last one? I'm not sure which is the last one here. But we'll go through the commands. We'll look at the commands now. I was just trying to explain all the concepts. I still don't get the difference between git reset and git revert. Okay, I will walk you through that again. Did that clarify your question related to checkout and committed? Yeah, I think that kind of explains changes in particular B1, B2, B3. So yeah, the old way of doing git checkout was actually to use that git checkout command. But if you just look at the documentation for git switch, that's the newer command. And so I was covering this in the lab, that git checkout actually does a lot of things. You can check out a particular commit, you can check out a branch, you can undo commit history as well using the checkout command. So it was trying to do a lot of things and not just checking out changes. And that's why git restore is a new command and git switch is also a new command. So the newer preferred way is to start using more specific commands rather than having one command which does a lot of different things. So that's why the community is now preferring to use git switch and git restore. And I can share a link where it kind of explains the need that we have a git switch command now instead of a git checkout command. Okay, so you don't understand what's the difference between revert and reset. Okay, both of them allow you to go back to a particular commit history. And like I was explaining, I have no idea why I stopped sharing. Just stop sharing. Yeah. So I'm not sure why it just stopped sharing my screen. Okay. Yeah, so both of them allow you to undo certain commits in your repository. The difference between git reset and git revert is you should use the git reset command only if you have not shared those changes with your collaborator in the GitHub repository. Okay, and why? Because once you share that with your collaborators will also have those commits that you want to undo. And if you just run like a git reset and try to wipe it out, you will lose, I mean, your collaborators will not be able to get those changes. So it will cause a lot of confusion and a lot of mess with the repository because your collaborators have a different code base now and you have a different code base. Because like I was saying, git reset just wipes this out as if nothing happened. Okay, so there's no logging in history that you actually resetted this. It will just undo. We'll look at the git log command. So when I do this and I run a git log, you will see that it has actually wiped it out. And it does it kind of implicitly that I have reset it and it doesn't log anything. There's no record, there's no history. If you are in your local project directory and you haven't shared that changes with your collaborator, it is okay to use that particular command. Because okay, you're still experimenting and you found out okay, those changes are not working and I want to actually undo those commits, which is absolutely fine. But if they have been shared with your collaborators, and I'm trying to refrain from using the term push because we haven't covered what git push is yet, but if you have already pushed those changes to the GitHub repository, your collaborators will not know that you undid those changes and they will have no record. So in that particular case, we should do a git restore, because if, like you see, the git restore command, it will, to undo those changes, it preserves the commit history. Okay, your C3, C4 is there, but git itself has the intelligence to add a new commit called C5. I am undoing these changes C3 and C4. So it has the intelligence to identify what those changes were, whether it's one file or 100 files, and it will undo those changes for you without you touching anything. So it will, your repository, your working directory will look like it only has these changes, whatever files that were, let's say, you have file 1, file 2. Let's say you had 4 files for simplicity that were modified for these particular changes. So it kind of removes these 2 files that were added. Again, I'm assuming that we just added these files as a part. F3 was added as a part of C3 commit. F4 was added as a part of the C4 commit. So it will just remove these files automatically. That Git will do. You don't have to do it. So Git has that intelligence to say, okay, in C3, this file was added. I have to undo this change. I will delete that. If there were 2 lines that were added, Git will remove those 2 lines instead of a file. With the simplicity, I'm using the example of just one single file. And in C4, F4 was added, so I will delete that particular file. So Git will calculate what those changes were, undo them for you, and now Git wants to track what it has undone. So what it will do, it will add a new commit called C5, with a message, and you can add your own message saying, okay, I am undoing these changes C3 and C4. So let's say now when your collaborators look at this particular repository, they exactly know what happened, right? That, okay, you pushed a few commits, you were not happy with that, and you undid those commits. But in this particular case, your collaborators will not know what happened. There's actually no logging. So that's the difference when you should use a git reset versus a git restore command, git revert command, sorry. Working directory staging, will you clarify which sits physically? Which sits physically on your computer? C1, C2, C4, C5, undo, C3, C4. Okay, yeah, sorry. You want me to label the commands. So this is just the mapping, and this is what we are doing is a git revert here. And this is a git reset. Okay. Yeah, is that clear now, like what these are? So your working directory is what your project folder is, okay? So this is whatever is your project folder. Staging area is a Git, it's a Git internal thing. You don't see this area, but Git kind of manages that staging area, okay? So you don't see the staging area. Your local repository is basically your .git folder. If you look at your .git folder, again, it's something that we covered. It has a record of where your head is pointing to, what changes have been committed, what it's aware of. All of that information or intelligence is the .git folder that keeps track of all the changes that you've made and you've committed. So really what you see is the working directory. The working directory is kind of communicating with all the commands like git commit, git push, and we'll cover the fetch and pull as well with your local repository to get all the information. Okay, what information do you have for me for this one? Or it's providing the local repository information like the git commit. So you only see the working directory. Staging area, local repository is more Git internal specific, and the remote repository is GitHub basically remote, and that you will see that on a completely different UI. Okay, so this is your GitHub. Okay, cool. Now let's stop sharing. Let's look at the commands of what actually is happening here. So, share the screen. Okay, so we'll try, and again, I know this is very tricky. There are different commands. I think it's important to understand what you want to do, because a lot of the times when you just try to Google, oh, I want to undo some changes, it gives you all of these 3 different options and different answers. You go to Stack Overflow, different answers. There are different answers. All of these commands are actually reverting files or reverting certain changes or undoing changes in your GitHub repository. But it's important to understand which one is being used for which particular use case. So that's why we will take some time to go through this so that you get a better understanding. And it's something that's done very, very frequently. There's a lot of use case in the open source community, in a live working environment, where you will be undoing both your local changes and something that has been already shared with your collaborators, and you want to undo because there was an issue found and you just want to remove that particular commit or undo those changes. So that's why we'll give this some time and love that it needs. Okay, so I'm just showing you what's there. So let's just look at what branches are from the last session. So the feature 1, there's a master. So I just created a new branch, feature 1. We're currently on a feature 1 branch, and I think I just added a few files here. If I do a git log, let's do a git log online. So yeah, we have some features added over here, and we'll try to undo some of these changes. Yeah, so I added some new features, some feature 1, feature 2, feature 3. I'll add a few more changes because these are new files. I'll try to add a few more changes here. So this is a new feature one, right? Yeah, okay, let's make some, again, I'm just trying to, there's nothing to follow here. I'm trying to create a kind of commit history that we can then go and undo changes, okay? So I will just add this file. Let's look at the first command, which was git restore. So I've just changed one file. I've added this, it was empty. I've just added like one over here, okay? So if we look at our git status now, okay, so there are two modified files here, feature one and new feature one. So now the first command that I shared, it was like git restore file. So it says changes not staged. So commit, use git add to update what will be committed. So this is adding the files to the staging area. It also tells you that git restore file to discard changes in your working directory. Okay, so this is the first command that we were covering, and git kind of prompts you when you run the git status. Okay, what do you need to do exactly? I just changed feature one. I worked on new feature one last week. I don't know what it is. I'm not interested in that particular change. So I will undo this change. Okay, we'll keep feature one, but I will undo new feature one here. So I will just restore. I will restore, but let's look at. Let's do git restore. What is there in feature one? Okay, yeah. So this particular file was modified last week, and this actually doesn't had any changes. I just added this line feature one. Okay, so if I do git restore and new feature one, and if I look into this file now, it's actually undone those changes. So you don't have anything in this file. That's what the simple restore command will do. You just revert back to whatever was there in the head. So we revert back to whatever my file looked at this particular last commit history. Okay. Now we try to do the staging command. So let's say I am happy with feature one and I want to add that. So I do new feature one. Okay. And if I run a git status now, so you see it again gives you that restore command. So this was the restore command in case you want to undo the changes that you've made in your working copy. Okay, so you're just discarding the changes in your working directory, and you will have exactly what your head kind of looks at. So whatever was committed at this point, you want to go back. That's what this git restore command tells. So yes, you want to discard the changes, but what will you have? Like what will your file look at when you discard those changes? Your file will look at what it was at this particular point in time where your head is currently and with this commit. And with the, so now I've staged this particular file, but for some reason I'm not happy with it, something has changed, and I want to unstage this. I don't want this file to be ready to be committed. So it tells you that these are the changes to be committed. Use git restore -- stage to unstage. So we'll just unstage it now. Git restore. And this is my file. Okay. And if we run a git status, you see it's again gone back to your working directory where these changes can either be added to the staging area or you can completely undo these changes. Okay, so that was an example of the restore. Any questions on that before we move to the other two more complicated commands? Just checking the chat history. Okay, I don't see any questions related to git restore. Yeah, this is the most simpler command. So I don't think I drew anything particular. I was just like writing something. I'm just checking which diagram you're referring to. No, not, I don't think, but I can share what I had. I mean, this will be available. The recording will be available if you've missed anything. So don't worry too much about like these diagrams. But yeah, this is basically what I was sharing. So I had the git restore, git reset, and git revert command. What the git restore is doing, those are the files. So it will just restore your files to either the head or remove it from the staging location. So for git restore, this is what I was explaining to you, that you are in the working directory, staging area, and local repository. You do a git add and git commit. That's when those changes are committed. But let's say you have a git restore and you want to do a file 1 and file 2. Okay. Yeah, so this basically means you are undoing these changes and adding whatever was there in your head over here to your working directory. Okay. It doesn't mean that you're adding. Yeah, it depends how you look at. Maybe I don't know if this is where it's causing confusion. That you are basically, when you run your git restore command, whatever changes were there in your head, git restore file 1, file 2. Maybe I should clarify this here. To head. Okay. So that's what your git restore command does. So maybe this arrow is causing a bit of confusion. Yeah, but basically it kind of means that when you run a git restore, it will revert back the files to whatever was here. Okay, and then when you do a git restore with the -- staging, you have already files added via git add, and you run a git restore staging, it will move whatever was there in your staging branch over here, in your staging area, into your working directory. Okay, yeah. Okay, now let's go to the two other. And is your working directory where your head is? Oh yeah, we should check that. It's a good point. Let's go back. Yeah, so we didn't add any more new commits. Okay, your head will only change because head points to the branch, whatever branch is checked out, and it will only change if you have new commits. In both of these cases, we didn't add any new commits, right? We had some changes in our working directory, and then we had some changes in our staging area. So we never kind of committed anything for the head to change, but I will still show you. So in both of these areas, so you see this file is still showing as, okay, it was modified, but we didn't do anything it yet. So git log. But see, it was previously pointing to the same commit or the same head, D56, still pointing to D56, okay? Because with this git restore, we don't touch anything that has been committed. Git restore is used to undo changes or undo files that are still in your staging area and your working directory. We have not gone to the git commit stage. We use the two other commands, which is the git reset and the git revert. Once you're committed, once your changes have been committed, with those commands, you will see your head move. Your head will point to a different commit if we use those particular commands. Yeah, the git restore. I'm just like kind of using. They are not the gospel truth. My diagrams. I'm just using them to explain some of these concepts. But when I was like referring to my notes, maybe so like I would suggest try to understand the concepts, because I'm just trying to help you understand, visualize some of these changes, but they're not like stamped or gospel truth that this is what it's happening. I'm like randomly drawing things here and there. But when I looked at that, and I don't know how the community is looking at my diagrams or how they're seeing it. When I looked at that after referring, maybe it kind of gave a wrong perception that I am moving those changes from my local repository into my working directory. It does that, but that's not the motive. The motive is to undo my changes which are there in my working directory. So that's why I kind of changed that arrow to point and say, okay, the point of this or the purpose of this particular command is undo the changes, which in turn restores whatever was there in head to your working directory. But that's not a command to kind of move changes from your local repository into your working directory. For now, we kind of do the git switch when you're switching between branches. But I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. Okay, let's go to the two other more a bit more complex commands, and let's look at. I'm just going to quickly add some changes. So I'll add this one. What am I? Okay. So I'm going to add a few commit history so that we can undo them. Okay. Let's do commit one. Oh. Okay, that's done. And I'm going to make another change. So I'm just adding a few random commits. So this is one. I'm just going to add like 2, 3, 4, 5 or something like that and add all of this as a separate commit. Okay, and this is 2. Okay, let's add 3. And then we will start reverting them. So nothing to explain here. I'm just creating some dummy commit history so that we can start reverting these commits, okay? And let's add in the 6. I will add another one and then we can start reverting these back. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we've undone all of these. So let's look at git log, what our git log looks at this particular point in time. So you see, I've just randomly added some commits here. Basically, I've added those lines. So when I'm undoing those changes, we can clearly see, okay, those particular lines which I added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have been removed from that particular file. So let's start with the first command, which was git reset. Okay, so that's what my commit history looks like. That's what my file is looking like currently. I have all of these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1 in each line. Okay, so let's say I want to go back to this particular commit. Okay, so I will run git reset and this hash. So I need to copy this and I will add it here. Okay, so once I have to check anything. Okay, let's run a git status first so that we see there's nothing in my repository. It's all clean. So you see, it's all saying working directory is clean. There's nothing there. When I just run git reset, you will see my logs will change. I will lose my my commit history, so it will just wipe out commit 6 and commit 7, but it will save my changes. Okay, so my change, not save, it will preserve my changes. So when I do a git status, you will see that particular file still has those changes that I modified, but it hasn't been committed yet. So it's still waiting for me to be committed in case I want to do anything with those changes. Because once this is lost, it's gone. You will lose that work completely. So kind of Git gives you like one chance to do something with those changes that you just undid. Okay, so just keep in track what the git log looks like at this stage and what my git status looks like at this stage. Now I will do a git reset and this particular hash. Okay, so now you see unstaged changes after reset. So whatever changes were there made to this particular file, it has been unstaged. So if I look at my git status at this point of time, you see it says, it kind of puts it back in your working directory. So either you can add it or you can discard them completely. And if I look at, so this file, it still has all of those numbers that hasn't like gone or kind of just vanished away, okay? Still has all of those numbers. But if you look at my git log now, you see it's gone back to commit 5. So it completely wiped out 7 and 6 from my Git history as if nothing happened or nothing changed. Okay. Is this clear before I go? So with the hard one, now I will use the hard option and you will see this file would also be modified. It will lose that file. It will lose these changes completely. Okay. What is the difference between git commit and, okay, I'm not sure if I can, but basically we do kind of two, we can add it in, let's say I have a file and instead of running 2 steps like git add, and I was like adding file1.txt, okay, that's what we do. We will do a git add and then we will run a git commit because I just wanted to create a dummy history. I just did git commit. So it will add and commit at the same time. So that A is like an add flag. So you don't have to run 2 commands, git add and git commit. You kind of just add that flag for hyphening and it will add it and commit it at the same time. Yeah, so at this point of time, like I was saying, it undid the changes related to the commit, not undid, it wiped out the history, okay? 6 and 7 were wiped out from the history. So your commit history, you see, those 2 particular changes were completely wiped out. This is what it looked like. You had commit 7 and you had commit 6. But when I did a git reset, it kind of wiped out that commit history, but your changes were saved. So I added those 2 lines. 6 was added as a part of commit 6, 7 was added as a part of commit 7. It still has those changes. It didn't lose those changes because now it's telling me, okay, you have these changes in your working directory. So instead of just wiping them out, it moves those changes to your working directory. So now it tells me git status that, okay, I have these changes. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to commit them or do you want to just discard them? Okay. I want to discard them. I use it as a demo thing. So I am happy it's done its job and I want to discard these changes. Git restore new feature file. So this is the command that we did previously. If you have something in your working directly and you want to undo those changes. So when I run this command, what is going to happen now? Well, this is the file that I actually modified with all of these commits, new feature 1. Okay, great. So now, can anyone type in the chat, please? What will happen to new feature 1 when I do this? So it's just a command that we just looked at. Yeah, that's right. You will lose 6 and 7 completely. Yeah, it will lose that. So let's run this. So that's what the restore does. Restore will take whatever is in your head and add it to your working directory. And what is in my head? My head has the last thing is in commit 5. In commit 5, the only line that was present was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's what this git restore will do. So now if I look at my new feature 1, you see it's wiped out 6 and 7. No, that's a different command. That's the rebasing command that we'll cover, but that's not the purpose of that. The purpose of git reset is really if you have some changes and you are not happy with those changes. Because as developers, you will see we are constantly committing certain changes and looking at, if I'm working on my feature branch, right? I'm constantly committing some changes. And in a real production system, you would be running some tests on these feature branches as well before you kind of push them at a higher level. So let's say I committed some changes. I want to run some tests and my tests are failing. So I want to change this last 2 commits. So Anna, to your question that if you want to merge or change the history of a small commit, there's a different command for that. We'll go through that. That's the rebasing thing. But this is solely to manage your local, to manage changes within your local repository. Okay. So now we will look at the hard option where it will completely wipe out the changes. No, that is why restore command, you have to use it with caution. Okay, so if you do if you've lost your changes after restore, because remember restore is in your working directory, and Git doesn't monitor, Git doesn't track your, I wouldn't say track, but Git doesn't have a history of your working directory. Only when you commit changes, okay, that's when Git starts tracking them. So you're still in your working directory area. You need to go to the staging area, and then you need to go to the local repository by committing it. So at this stage, if you run a restore, you have lost your changes. You cannot get them back. No, till you kind of whatever change. So you can be changing a lot of files in your working directory, and if you haven't kind of save those changes for yourself and you undo them, you will lose those changes. No, you cannot. So anything that you undo from your working directory, you can't get it back. Okay. Yeah, a staging area is basically to tell Git that these changes will be committed. Okay. So I make some changes. I think they look good. They are clean. I put them in the staging area. And then I'm again working on something else. And it's the same file. Maybe it could be the same file. Maybe you're working on a UI, changing some background colors. You're happy with it. You put them in this. It's like kind of, okay, I want to park these changes. And then you're working on some other feature and you make more changes to that particular file. So again, it's some I covered this, but when you make a commit, the recommendation that your commits should be atomic. Okay, so in case if you have 5-6 different files that needs to be updated for one particular feature, all of that should go out as one commit. Okay, so maybe you've modified 1 or 2 files and you think those changes are ready, you put them in the staging area. Once they are in the staging area, Git kind of knows, okay, these changes will be updated. Then you work on the other remaining files for that particular feature, and then you stage the other ones, and then you kind of do a Git commit. So when you Git commit, all of those changes, multiple changes that were there for that one particular feature, you commit them as like a single commit rather than, okay, commit 1, commit 2, something that we've been doing like this, we're doing now. Yeah, AM is basically you add the commit and you add the message as well. So the Git commit, the short form of Git commit that I've been using is Git commit -m and then the message, but you can add -am as well in case if you want to do both together. No, so reset is the recommended one when you haven't pushed to GitHub, but if you have pushed to GitHub, the recommended one is to use a Git revert, because you will otherwise have no tracking once your changes have been pushed to GitHub for with your collaborators that these changes run. So in this particular case, like I was saying, if I kind of share this with a collaborator, right? If I share this repository now, they would have no idea that actually I added 6 and 7 to my file as well, right? From this particular log. All they would see is like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were added. They wouldn't know at some point I added like 6 and 7. Obviously, we're talking lines here, where in the real world, this could be some feature. These would be some critical file changes. So if you share this with your collaborators, they will have no clue at all that, okay, 6 and 7 were actually modified. So for good tracking history, you should use a Git revert. If you have already pushed those changes to GitHub, you can think of it as sharing it with your collaborators. Yeah, you can, but it's just a preferred way. You can still use the Git revert command if you haven't pushed those changes, but that's very local to you. So you want to track that, okay, like I'm trying to think of a use case where you want to track that you undid some changes when those changes were not finalized, right? You can definitely use Git revert if they haven't been pushed, but I was just trying to think of a use case. So the preferred way is it would just create additional commit history, which can again be very noisy. So you're undoing some changes in your working directory with your commit history, and your Git revert will go and create a new commit. So it's a bit noisy. Yeah, but there's nothing stopping you from using a Git revert if you haven't shared it with your repo with your collaborators yet. It's just that it can make your commit history a bit noisy. So be mindful of that. Like, do you want your collaborators to know that you undid some changes that were not working or for which the tests failed? Like, what is the use case for that? But as a feature, it is allowed. I'm just saying what is the preferred way of doing it. You can do it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we just went to Git reset now. That was Joanna's comment. Let's go to the hard one where we will lose these changes. So this is what my Git log looks like now. So I'm at commit 5 and I look my Git status, everything is clean. So now I will do a Git reset, but with the hard option. Okay. And again, let's say I want to go to this commit 4. Okay, so again, take a note of the logs over here. Okay, we have commit 5 and commit 4. My working tree is pretty much clean, and we know what changed, right? For each of these commits, we added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that particular order to this file new feature 1. So let's do this one now. So now it tells you your head is pointing at this particular commit, which is 709, which makes sense because I've reset it to this particular commit. So if I do a git log now, so my head has moved from commit 5 to commit 4. And if I see new future 1 file over here, you see it has removed 5 completely. It hasn't moved those changes to your working area. So be very careful when you use this option because you will lose those changes completely. In case if you wanted to do something with those changes, you shouldn't use the hard flag. So that's the difference between those two options of git reset. Your commit history kind of just time travels back, wipes it out completely. And depending on what option you choose, your changes may be preserved in your working directory, or you could completely lose them. Git reset hard. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So now let's look at the other option, which is a git revert. Okay, git revert, there's just one command and we will see what the commit history again looks like. So if we look at our log now, our log looks like it that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, commit 5. Let's look at our new feature file. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what my new feature file looks like. Okay. But I want to go back to, I don't like 3 and 4, so I want to remove 3 and 4. Okay, I just want 1 and 2. So I will say revert this particular commit. So git, okay, my git status, let's look at git status. This is all clean as well. Okay, now we do a git revert instead of a git reset. Git revert, and I want to revert commit number 3, whatever commit 3 I made. Merge conflict, new feature 1. Git add, then run. Oh, okay. Did I change this file? Okay. So you see, this is actually giving me a merge conflict. So we haven't gone through git merges, but you can get these conflicts. So it tells you what was there in your head and what is there in your particular commit. That is your commit 3 right now. Yeah, I will cover git merges in more detail now, but for now, I will just modify this file. So you see git over here gives you all the commands that you need, right? So it tells you after resolving the conflict, mark them with git add or git remove, whatever is your file. So basically I have a conflict. It's trying to undo some changes, but it's not able to do that because of a conflict. And I will cover these git merges when we go through PRs. And again, I'm just conscious of time. I covered just one topic. So yeah, I will just make the changes. So I only wanted git. I just wanted the 1, 2, and 3. We'll go through what head and all of this means. So just let's look at the command, okay? So I just wanted to revert back to 1, 2, and 3. I did a Control S, save this file. Now if I look at the Git status, so it says my new feature 1 file was modified because it had some conflicts. I resolved those conflicts. And it says this file is currently modified. So I will do a git add. So I'm basically adding these changes. If I do a git status now, it says that file was modified, but we don't commit it like we've been doing all this while because I am in a git revert stage. Okay, so you see Git gives me all of the commands. Resolve the conflict. So I went into the text file, I resolved the conflict that I had, and don't worry about what that conflict is or how that works. I'll go through that when we do the merge section. So after you resolve those conflicts, you can say either you want to add those changes or remove a particular file from those changes in case you've added new files. So in this case, you want to add them to the staging area, and then you can run this command called git revert continue. Okay. You can also skip it if you don't want it, or you can also run a git revert abort. So you want to abort this revert, and you can try again and go back and git revert if you want. So I want to continue. Okay. So I will run this command git revert continue. Okay, so this is what now Git is trying to make a new commit. This is what git revert does. It will undo the changes. It will undo the changes in the file, but it will add a new commit history. So git now, and again, this depends on the editor that you have configured. In my particular case, I have Vim. So it's telling me, okay, I want to add a new commit. What is the commit message that you would like to add? And it gives you, say, okay, this reverts. So I am reverting commit 3. This reverts this particular commit, whatever that commit hash was. So this is the new commit message that you will see when you revert this. When we do the log, you will see this as a new commit message. So I'll just keep it as revert commit 3. Okay, so now it says, okay, I've made those changes, one file changed or added or deleted. So now if I look at my git log, so you see it has those commits. It hasn't wiped it out like reset. In reset, it was just wiping out all our commits. So in this case, it has our commit. It has preserved our commit history, but it added a new commit over here with saying, I am reverting commit number 3. Okay, so you can also take a look at like git log, which will give you all the detailed information. So this is what it says, revert commit 3. This reverts this particular hash. And what is that hash? Yeah, this hash kind of refers to commit number 3. Okay, so if I look at my git status, it should be all clean, nothing to do. So that is the difference between a git restore, a git revert, a git revert and a git restore. Sorry. Yeah, I'll cover those. That is like when you do a merge, it kind of tells you, okay, this is what is in your head. That means what your repository knows about. And this is what is coming from your current working directory. So we'll go through that once I go through PRs, because that's how we do merges now. We cannot just merge anything into a branch. Most common use case is by creating PRs. So I will go through merging. We haven't gone through it. It was just coincidental that it was throwing me a merge error, but then we saw a different kind of example. Because again, don't be frightened or thrown away or taken aback by these things that Git throws at you. Once you understand your foundation, you can read these commands, right? You can make sense out of it. I think a lot of the times beginners, when a message like this comes up, they are like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. It's not making any sense. So let's say if you didn't understand what git revert or git restore was doing, and you just went on to Stack Overflow, Google the command, and then you saw this message come, and you have no idea what it's trying to tell you or convey you. It has its own language of conveying messages or conveying information. But now, with all of that information, even if it throws an error at you, you know how to resolve it. You understand the language. All of that kind of makes sense to you. So it was a good thing that we saw that error. And yeah, so we understand now that, okay, you have to resolve the conflicts, add them, or in case you have files, you can remove them. And then you just run that command, git revert continue. Yeah, I did show. Did I not show? Yeah, you see, it's gone back. But this was actually a merge conflict, right? So I kind of went in, Git told me, this is a merge conflict. What do you want this file to be? So I kind of chose what I want the file to be, but I'll cover that in merge when we go through merges on how you can handle merge conflicts. Okay. Yeah, that's what is there in the file. Okay, I am really conscious of time. I've just covered one thing, which is undoing changes. I do want to go through, let's go through GitHub repository. Yeah, let's quickly go through what the GitHub repository is. Now we'll go through GitHub first, give you a very quick introduction about it. I only have 10 minutes now. So yeah, I'll just give you a quick introduction about GitHub at this particular point of time. And we might have to cover some of these other concepts in a later session. But like we don't have any more complex commands now. It's mostly understanding how GitHub, Git push, fetch. They're fairly easy. I think this is quite complicated, even some of the commands that we looked at previously. So it should all go fairly easy now. But to give you an idea of what GitHub is, like I was saying, GitHub is basically a place where you can collaborate, share your code with other contributors, developers within the community. You do need internet. You do need an account to sign up into GitHub. And once you're into GitHub, you can see all the different repositories that are available within the community. So like go to GitHub. So you can just see what's been happening to all the different repositories within GitHub. You can subscribe to them, and I'll show you. Let's go to the Women Who Code London repository. So this is the Women Who Code London repository. So you see the code over here, and this is our README. We haven't covered README, but basically it tells you a bit more information about the repository. You can read about it. So this is a Women Who Code London repository. For more technical projects, it will tell you how you can set up your development environment. It will give you all the information, what commands you need to run. Right? So this is basically a community repository, and you can find all the information, how you connect with people, what are the opportunities. There are a lot of volunteering opportunities. So yeah, there's a lot of informative material on it. I would encourage you to check it out in case if you're looking for something more specific. So yeah, this is where you'll find all the code. We don't have, this is a community repository. We just have a lot of information. There's no code here really. But to walk you through what GitHub is, yeah, you go into github.com, look at a particular repository that you're interested in. And if you want to look at, okay, what are all the commits that have gone into your repository? On the Git terminal, we were running Git log, but you can look at all the commits that has happened in this particular repository using the commit history over here. I don't know if this is big enough. Sorry. Okay, I hope this is good enough. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's where all the code was. I just clicked on this particular, it shows you what is the commit history. So I went into that, and you can see all the commits that have been made. These are the commit hashes. This is the short form. And so you can even go to the repository at this particular time. So you see, it tells you, okay, if you wanted to see what this particular repository looked at this particular commit, okay, or looked on the 30th of October, you can click on this link or click on this icon, and we'll take you to what the repository looked at this particular commit history and see what exactly there was. So I'm just walking you through the UI. There's nothing conceptually, there's no concept here, just making you aware of some of the features that GitHub provides you. That's how you check all the commits. That's your hash. That's how you can browse your repository at this particular point in time. And you can look at, so if you want to like follow what's happening in this community, in this particular repository, you can kind of just click on this icon, and if there is any new issues or there are any commits made to this particular repository, you will be notified. I'll cover forks because that's a part of how the open source community works as a later topic. You can also start it. So basically, you don't have to kind of always go and type it over here. You will store it within your profile as you kind of like this repository and you want to easily access it. That's what this does. Some of these issues, so if you want to see all the branches over here, right? We run Git branch, but over here you can click on this particular icon and you can see the branch. This one only has one because this uses the fork model, but I'll show you the one that I have, which is my fork repository. Yeah, so this is a fork repository that I have in my account. Again, don't worry about it, but like you see, there are two versions of it. One is within the Women Who Code organization, and this is my copy, but we cover forks. I'm just trying to walk you through what the GitHub UI looks like. So if you look at this particular, just think of it as some repository. A repository means nothing else but your working directory, okay? And we'll push this. I wanted to do it today, but I don't think we will be able to do that. But basically, we've been working on this demo local repository right now. I want to share this with more collaborators whom I want to look at this particular project and work on with. I will upload this repository, this working directory into GitHub. So a repository is nothing but your working directory, which is managed and tracked by Git. That's what we've been calling local repository. And when you upload it onto GitHub, that's a remote repository. Fork. You see, F-O-R-K, fork. Yeah, forked repository. We'll cover forking, okay, in a bit. I mean, not today, but we do intend to cover it. So that's the commit history of all of these. So yeah, we want to look at the branches. So on our terminal, we do a git branch. But if you look at this repository, you can find all your branches here. Okay. We'll cover pull requests. I don't want to go through it now, but basically you can see all the pull requests that are available. Let's look at this one. So you will see all the pull. It doesn't have any open, but there were a lot that were closed. So you can look at all the pull requests that were open against this particular project. And we'll go through how you create a pull request and how you can review it and collab. So you see there's a lot of communication that is happening. There's questions being asked, clarifications being made. So that's what pull requests allow us to do. You want to merge some changes, or let's say you want to promote some changes from your feature branch into master branch, right? You want to merge them or push them into your master branch. In the open source community, you do that using pull requests. And when you make that and when you propose that changes, it allows other collaborators to ask you questions about those changes, of why you've chosen a certain way of doing something, provide you feedback on what could be better and what could be improved. So this is what your pull requests look like, and you can access it here. We will not cover action because it's a bit more advanced and it's related to CI/CD. This is more, again, project management. I wouldn't cover it in this section. The issues, yes. So in case if you say, if a link is not, this is for Women Who Code London, but in other technical projects, if you find a particular defect or a bug or something is not working, or even documentation, if you think the documentation is not up to date, doesn't give you all the information for a particular repository, you can raise an issue and say, okay, this is the defect, or this is the issue that I've been having. And it's really creating a new issue and filing your defect or bug, give it a title and add description or as much as information possible for the reviewers to review your request and give you feedback on that. So yeah, that's what basically the UI kind of looks at.